Hey everybody, it's Matt here at pianoblog.com. I wanted to jump on really quick and give you a couple helpful tips if you're at the part of your piano study where you're learning chord inversions. So chord inversions, if you don't know really briefly, it's taking, say, a three-note triad like C, E, G, and then moving the bottom note of that triad to the top, so that instead of C, E, G, you have E, G, C, and then doing the same thing, moving the E to the top so that you have G, C, E, and so on. So if you don't understand what that is, that's okay. You can still apply some of what I'm about to talk about to your piano technique practice. But if you are at this point where you're learning chord inversions, one thing that a lot of people do when they're first learning these is that they actually sort of climb up because they're trying to figure out as they're playing what the notes are of the inversion. So they'll start with C, E, G, and then they'll sort of climb up so that they have, instead of, they'll kind of put their fingers like this, and then climb the second finger maybe to the G, and then get to the C. And then they'll sort of climb the same way up to the next chord inversion. So they'll climb their thumb up to the G, and then they'll put another finger on the C, and then so it kind of starts to look like this as they're playing. And that's actually fine. That's a good way to think through the theory of the inversions, to figure out what the notes are as you're learning. But it's not so great for the technique of playing, because one thing that chord inversions do for you is they get you really good at jumping around in the key. So instead of feeling like you're really having to keep your fingers attached to the keyboard, being able to just kind of jump around without much trouble, to move around the keyboard, to feel like you understand the geography of the keyboard a little bit better. So what I always suggest to students after they've kind of figured out what the notes are is that they actually practice like this, playing the chord and then jumping to the next chord before playing, so visualizing ahead. So what that looks like is you would actually play the chord, and then you would visualize ahead, and before you move your hand, actually just visualizing where the hand's going to go. So here I have C, E, G, but in my head I'm visualizing E, G, and C, and then moving my hand there. So instead of moving before visualizing where the next position is, really having a mental image of what that looks like on the keyboard before I move. And what that does is you're kind of training your brain to have an idea of where you're going before you jump, before you move, because what people will tend to do is they'll move the hand and they'll be in kind of midair or crawling along, but they'll have no sense of what's next, and that creates a lot of tension, a lot of confusion in playing. This is a good general rule with jumps of all sorts. If you have any sort of jump, practicing visualizing where you're going before you move the hand. So just getting in that mental habit of thinking, visualizing ahead with your inversions before you move, just seeing the shape and hearing it in your head, seeing the keyboard in your head is really, really helpful. Another step on top of that, once you start to feel more comfortable, is to close your eyes. So instead of looking down at the keyboard and kind of figuring out what's going on with the keyboard, actually having your eyes closed and then getting your hand into position before you play. Now what you're going to find, I'll open my eyes because it's kind of funny if I have them closed while I'm talking to the camera. What you're going to find is you will, if you're coming from above the key, so if you move your hand and then you're up like this, that's going to create a lot of problems. So you want to avoid kind of playing the chord from up here and trying to smash down. That technique might be helpful in some very unusual instances, but when you're first learning, actually practice visualizing and then jumping to the next position, but having your hand in that position. So I feel this next chord in my hand on the keys before I'm playing, like that. So if you do that with your eyes shut, what that's going to look like is this. So my hand's in position and then I play. I don't want to mix together getting in position and then playing. So I hope you find that helpful. I would practice that, especially if you're just learning chord inversions. I would practice that, that kind of mental pattern. Thinking ahead, visualizing ahead what the chord is, so that you kind of see it as a unit in your head, moving the hand to the next position and then playing. So it's actually 3 separate steps instead of trying to do everything at once. And I think you'll find that while that might take more concentration up front, in the long run, your playing is going to be much more fluid. You're going to feel much more comfortable moving around from one chord to the other on the piano. So I hope you find this helpful. If you like this, please like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, I've posted links to my free beginner piano lessons and my free piano technique lessons below this video. So please check those out, and I'll see you next time.